Hey, John Gilroy here. COBOL was released in 1960. The average federal worker was born in 1978. What could possibly go wrong? Time to talk about upgrades. Hit the music, Manny. Welcome to the Federal Tech Podcast, the podcast that connects you to federal technology leaders. My name is John Gilroy, and I will be your moderator. Our guests today are Karthik Mechery, Chief Architect from Carson Solutions, and Alan Thomas, former Commissioner, GSA FAS, and that's Carson, K-A-R-S-U-N. Is that spelled correctly, Karthik?
That's absolutely correct.
And you put the car in Carson?
You got that right, too.
Oh, that's really good. Now, one thing I can't get right is this whole transition from older systems. And I looked it up this morning. COBOL, really? 1960? Alan, do you even believe that? That's a while back, isn't it?
I believe it. It was a little older than I am, actually.
That's right. Typical, right? You may be the typical age of a govie, and before they're even born. So we have obvious needs to make a transition and modernize this technology, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Speaking of today, we are recording this from the AWS Public Summit in Washington, D.C. Yesterday, I was waiting outside at 7:30 in the morning to get in. Real busy place, isn't it, Alan?
It's very busy. Yeah, it's good. Good turnout.
Yeah. So, Karthik, did you go downstairs? There's 150 vendors down there.
Yeah, I was here on Monday for the partners event.
Yeah.
So there was a CTO roundtable.
Yeah.
It was pretty interesting to connect with the colleagues.
Yeah, Dave Levy did a great talk, and I heard Tulsi Gabbard.
Yeah.
And
I heard. Yes.
It was really, really good. It was this fantastic start. So let's talk about modernization. So, Alan, I say the obvious here. So why are government agencies interested in AI for modernization?
Well, John, there are fewer people in government today than there were even 4 or 5 months ago, you might have heard, right? So they're looking to potentially pick up some of the work, right, that's been left as there are fewer folks. Government's always thinking about trying to deliver a better experience for their customers. But they're doing it, as you kind of mentioned about COBOL born in 1960. They're doing it with a lot of legacy systems and a lot of legacy processes that those systems automate. And so that's why modernization is such a big deal. And really, you do have to focus on those processes, but also on those systems, right? What are those systems, and how can you efficiently modernize those systems? AI offers a potential way to do that. There's actually some good work started at GSA when I was there. That would probably be interesting to talk about, and it's ongoing. Karthik, I don't know if you want to mention a little bit about that.
Before you jump in, Karthik, I saw a press release this morning from Federal News Network, and the IRS IT workforce is down 25%. It tosses right to you, doesn't it? How, they have to automate. They have to use AI or something, don't they, Karthik?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the critical piece here, and I want to bring in about our tool that we are consistently using it's called Redux. You can find it at goredux.ai. It is specifically catered to the questions that pose, like what Alan just said. The workforce is reducing. The subject matter expertise is going down on these legacy systems. So what do I do? So our Redux enables what we call the blueprinting agents, which essentially goes into your legacy code, extracts it out, uses user guides, uses the demonstrations that are available, and clubs them together and becomes the subject matter expert for the government. So you can chat with the legacy code, you can understand the business rules that are being implemented, and we are successfully implementing this across all our programs. And we have migrated multiple mainframe COBOL applications into a modern technology. In tens or several of those, maybe even 20 of those have been migrated. Right
so,
now.
Karthik, think about when you were in college, and I would have stood up there and said, yes, you could chat with the legacy code. He would have walked out of the classroom. Yeah. So that's your talent. You can actually do this with Redux, huh?
Absolutely. You could do that with Redux. What Redux brings about is a few things. It has a set of agents, which we call the blueprinting agent, which essentially collects all that about the legacy code and enables you to chat with the legacy code. It also has a set of modernization agents, which essentially tells this legacy code to say, okay, if you want to reimagine it to be running on a cloud like AWS or Azure or any place else, you could actually convert the code to that particular platform and to that particular architecture and to that particular security posture that your agency or your organization requires. We constantly get requests. I mean, we have a very recent request from a commercial customer saying, hey, my subject matter expert is retiring end of July.
Yeah.
We are talking tens of millions of lines of code in COBOL, assembly language, and all sorts of databases that go with it, which are legacy in nature. And we are helping that customer figure out how best to chat with legacy and let these blueprinting agents become their subject matter expert.
So, Alan, I heard a federal guy from the OMB, and he was talking about AI. And he said, well, if we go too fast, we get a speeding ticket. If we go too slow, we get a parking ticket. So, Alan, what is Redux AI? Does that give you the speeding ticket or the parking ticket? Is it a good blend?
I think it's probably a good blend. Yeah, I think anytime you're talking about AI, any new technology, right? We're in a wave now. AI's hot,
Yep.
right? Everyone's talking about it. I think it's important to sort of step back, level set on definitions on what you're talking about. You hear people say things like agentic AI. What does that mean? I bet if you polled 10 different people here, you might get 8 different answers, right?
Maybe 800.
So, maybe 800. So it's important to kind of level set what that means, explain it to people, and then talk in business terms, right? How we're going to use this new technology to drive some business outcome that's important to the organization. And then for the workforce, explain how it could change their roles, right? How it interacts with them, how they might have some control over it, and manage that change, right? I mean, people have been managing change since fire was invented, right? It's a super important component to this, I think, right?
Yeah.
To make sure you're not going too fast, but also not going too slow.
So, Karthik, I was downstairs and I passed by the IBM booth. And when I was a young man, the joke was IBM stands for inexpensively built in Mexico. I don't know if that's true anymore, but they do have a big presence in the mainframe world. So you got a mainframe in there. It could be an IBM, quite possibly. So what's the magic sauce? I mean, give us some reasons why it's so difficult to get out of that environment.
Well, so think about mainframe, right? So we have several interconnectivities going on in legacy systems. Remember, these are built over decades and perfected over decades. It's not like it's an inoperable system. It's hard to maintain, it's expensive to maintain, but these are perfected over decades, which means when I'm trying to run a modernization program to complete in 5 years, I'm taking 40 years worth of work, or maybe larger, and I'm trying to convert, migrate and modernize that particular thing in a 5-year time frame. So, that is one big thing, complex legacy, interactions. The second thing is it is essentially the entire enterprise is run on the mainframe. If anything breaks, the mission criticality of it is too much. The financial impact is too much. The mission impact is too much. So you have to be cautious about how we streamline the modernization efforts. The third is, how do I pick and choose what agents are necessary? So, like when you talk about agentic AI, what agents are necessary, right? So I'm thinking agents, if I'm a developer and I should have my own team of digital workforce, essentially one creating unit tests, one creating my code, one creating, my security compliances and so forth. Similarly, for a business analyst, I need somebody who can create user stories and so forth. You know what I'm saying? So you build for every role in your software development cycle, you need digital assistants or digital workforce that supports that kind of a setup. It makes it more difficult because of the subject matter expertise that we spoke about. And so how do we build subject matter expertise that has been brought about in 40 years or 50 years time frame? It's very difficult. So that's why we brought in the blueprinting agents, so that you don't have to depend on some individual, opposed to anybody can walk in and walk out, and still the legacy business rules, the subject matter expertise doesn't leave. Third is the functional equivalence on when you migrate it to a modern architecture. How do we ensure that what you have here is also available in the new systems? So those things make it very difficult. So we have agents to support that functional equivalence. Security postures are different between the mainframe and the current cloud-based architectures. So how do we make sure that it's equivalent? So those things make it very difficult. And those are a few examples, but there's a lot more that goes with it.
Yeah. So, Alan, I have a real estate question for you. So years ago, my wife was looking for a house. We saw one house that it was like a 2-bedroom house, okay? They built an extension on it with another bedroom, okay? Then they built another extension on it, and he had to go through the first bedroom into the second bedroom. And we looked at each other and we said, that was a messy upgrade, wasn't it? Now, this isn't the first time these older systems have been attempted to be integrated with others. So you may go in and find out, a hammer that's been left behind, or maybe a couple of nails that are in the wrong place, or plumbing that goes nowhere. And so that's what can happen. I mean, some of these older systems, they've gone in and maybe backed off with upgrades, haven't they?
They sure have. I mean, there's certainly been some waves of modernization. I mean, I do think it's important at the beginning, right, to assess what you have and make sure you kind of know what sort of house you're inheriting, right, before you just rush in to the modernization. I think another thing that's important when Karthik was talking there was he talked a little bit about mission criticality. Let's not forget when you go in and modernize a system, like let's say at IRS, right, or let's say at Social Security, for example, the government can't take some time off and say, we're not going to process tax returns this year, or, hey, we're not going to do benefit checks for the next 6 months, right, while we modernize these systems, right? So it's the proverbial, doing a little upgrade while you're flying the plane or driving the car. So you've got the complexity of 40 years and many upgrades, and then you've also got, but they're mission critical, and they're not services that the government can just simply turn off for a bit, right? And you don't upgrade them in a weekend. So that really kind of adds to the complexity. The agent, this idea of a digital workforce and having a human with a bunch of agents that it can really be a force multiplier, does potentially allow you to speed up the work, right? But you got to have a partner who knows how to build those agents and help you deploy them. Because that's right. We spend a lot of time teaching people how to manage other people. I don't think we spend a lot of time teaching people how to manage agents yet.
Yeah.
Right? That's my kids are 19 and 21. That's probably coming for them, right? But I don't have any experience managing agents, right? No. So that's something to think about as well.
So Karthik, you mentioned it earlier. REDUX. So people can go there, redux.ai.
GoRedux.ai.
And read and find exactly, because you've been thrown into the fight and somehow you survived, and you figured out that some of these tools can actually allow for a complex environment to make this transition, because there's so many dependencies to worry about and layer upon layer. It's a pain.
Yeah, for one of the customers, I think they had 19 mainframe applications. Okay. The good news story is we were able to modernize those 19 applications into their modern architecture. So the first 2 years, we did not have any AI support. But in the second half, where they wanted to accelerate it to less than 5 years, we brought in our GoRedux toolkit to assess that kind of impact. How do we roadmap this? What goes first? What goes next? And what is the security postures of each one of these as we are modernizing these systems? GoRedux.ai is what we used, and that really helped us understand the complexities quickly, because there was a need to accelerate. So what was a 5-year program, we could complete the work in 4 years.
Wow.
So again, without GoRedux, that would have been harder to do. Yeah. But I'm not saying it's be all and all, but it definitely speeds up like 4x. And I think the cost is also reduced 2x as you go through this process. So
I've talked to many companies about automation, and I'm sure Alan's seen automation. And many times it is awkward. Sometimes you have teenagers, unintended consequences. Sometimes with teenagers, you have unintended consequences. And that can happen in other automation tools. And we've all seen it. And there's problems. Even within AI, there's hallucinations. And so you've gone through complex systems upgrade, and so you tried other tools, and maybe we're at the perfect storm where finally we have storage, and we have speed, and we have ability to develop AI code that can actually prevent some of these headaches.
I think that's possible. I mean, I would say anyone who always says, "Oh, this time it's different," I would say, we've heard that many times before, right? So I think we're always getting better. There's always some evolution. There is, I think, a step function change here with AI, particularly when you apply it to the right kind of problem sets. Coding, I think, is one of those problem sets. If you look at how people are using AI today, coding is the software development's the number one use case. Right? You can see things like customer service agents, for example, and how to make them significantly more efficient than they already are. I can even see it in the space I'm familiar with, acquisition and procurement, right? Where you the government puts out an RFP and they get thousands of questions from vendors, right? You could see an AI bot be able to help you answer those questions much more efficiently. You could see them help you be able to draft documents and things like that. So I do think we're at a kind of a step function change in terms of productivity. Is it different? I mean, sort of, right? But I always think in 5 years we'll be talking about something else also, right? And we'll have folded in all the goodness from AI that we see today.
Yeah. Karthik, I made a silly analogy with a house and fixing a house, and some people use a manual drill, and then you can use an electric drill.
Yeah.
Better. And so in your world, instead of a physical drill, you have a digital workforce. Huh? So you have a digital tool to use.
Yeah.
So it's a recent buzzword. So what does this all mean to you, a digital workforce?
Well, so what I recently said in our town hall and in our meetings internally to Carson is that everyone must have, even whether you're an individual contributor or a manager or a supervisor, think about a digital workforce that supports you for the mundane work that you keep doing on a day-to-day basis. It's about building out efficiencies. It is about reducing or doing more with the same or less, right? So I won't say with less all the time, but doing more with the same that you have in place. So we are kind of building out, digital equivalents to, for example, my role. What are the things that I do on a daily basis that can be done through digital agents? And that's how we are evaluating these things. So similarly, we are bringing the same concept to software development through GoRedux.ai. What are the agents available? Like, for example, is there an architect agent which knows that here's the target architecture I want? It builds out the entire architecture diagram, entire documentation that's necessary, the security architecture that's necessary, and spits it out because you are the brain power. You provide what that agent needs to do. The agent learns over time and then gives you the results that you're looking for. So instead of working on one project, you could potentially work on 5 at the same cost. That's where we are going, and we see a good focus and good rapid change coming in that area.
Well, Alan Thomas, now is time for me to get in trouble with the FCC because we're going to use a 4-letter word. Are you ready? Hold on to your hats. Where's the hats? We got a hat here. Hold on to it. It's called RISK, risk. And this is the whole thing, Hey, I heard stories about Carson. They did this over there, and they did this over there, and yeah, it's pretty good, and they did this over there. But what's the risk involved? And so let's talk about risk because if I deal with a car repair shop in Chicago, they may have a different threshold from risk than, let's say, a federal agency like the IRS, huh? And so let's talk about risk and AI. How do you include that in your evaluation of a system change?
Well, I think you want to look at past performance, right? So, if you're somebody like, Karthik and Carson, right? If you've got some good past performance where you've done it from a government agency standpoint, my joke about government agencies is they love to be second, right? Hey, I'm not sure I want to be the first one to kind of jump into the water, but if somebody goes second, or if I can go second and I see someone else has gotten in that water and it's not too cold and I can swim there, then I'm happy to do it. So I think, past performance is important. I do think also it's interesting, right, as the workforce in the government changes, you need people on the government side who are competent to be able to evaluate the solutions and the technology, right? So the government's going to have some of those competencies. Maybe they have them today, maybe they don't, but you might need to attract some different kinds of people into government, right, to be able to evaluate and deploy those kind of solutions and work alongside companies who are at the cutting edge, like the team at Carson.
If you go to Google Trends and type in hallucination, you'll see a big little hockey stick because what happens is people are getting these hallucinations.
Yeah.
And so, Karthik, the question for you is, how can you reduce or eliminate that using artificial intelligence, especially these agents?
So there's always the concept of human in the loop to make sure that you are making sure the results are correct. And then we apply techniques such as RAG and other things that go with it, which essentially augments the generation that's happening behind the scenes. So it's not always risk-free. But however, if you look at GoRedux.ai for software development purposes, it's mostly done in the lower environments. The risk of error to the mission is lower. The quality of the code can be tested. The quality of the code either automated. the quality of the artifacts and requirements coming out and the functional equivalence can be tested. So it kind of brings the risk level a little bit down. It's not zero, but the risk of error is lower than what if you deploy an AI for a mission of some sort. So there, the risk is higher. In software development, the risk is relatively lower.
I think there's also some risk. You mentioned, the speeding ticket, parking ticket,
yeah.
Right? I think there's some risk as the technology is moving rapidly like this in not sort of getting out there and engaging with it and using it, right? If you hang back and wait too long, or you put too many guardrails around it, now you want to be smart about how you use it initially, right? You don't want to deploy it on a mission critical application right away, and something bad happened. But I think the right thing to do when you see change like this is to engage, right, and get smart about it and get it in your organization and work with it, and not get paralyzed, right, and feel like it's scary, and so then I don't want my people to engage with it. I think that's absolutely the wrong approach.
So I learned a word yesterday. I'm going to impress my neighbors with it. It's called non-deterministic, and they were describing zeros and ones, and with other types of architecture, they may use different ways to determine answers. So the question is this: when you switch to non-deterministic type systems, you almost have to have a human in the loop, because you can get two different answers to the same question 2 different days.
Yeah.
And so a human has to say, Columbus, Ohio, yeah, but we're talking about Columbus the Explorer. I mean, there has to be a human in here somewhere, don't there?
Yeah. When you talk about non-deterministic and then bring in human, it becomes kind of deterministic.
It does, but you need it.
But you do need it in the initial stages. I agree with that. I think that kind of creates what they call the fine-tuning aspects of it. So you keep fine-tuning it as you go make this progress, and then eventually it will become a fully non-deterministic mechanism, because the AI is learning as it's going through this process.
Well, let me talk about the 500-pound elephant in the room. It's called AWS. I was here yesterday morning and I heard Dave Levy. What the nicest guy in the world. Loved having him on my house tonight. I mean, really easygoing guy. I thought he'd be like apparently maybe he's the driver, behind the curtains, but easygoing, talked about using agents and artificial intelligence and everything else. So the relationship that Carson has is strong with AWS, isn't it?
Extremely strong. We are all into AWS. As you can see, we have several competencies. We are part of the Advanced Partners partnership with AWS. We have several competencies, such as the government competency, the migration competency, modernization and DevOps competencies, and so forth. Now we are working very closely with them on building out and utilizing Bedrock and the models that go with the AWS Bedrock. And we are very deeply invested in making sure that Redux is part of that ecosystem. And we look forward to the extremely wonderful partnership we've had so far.
Many people listen to my podcast when they're at the gym, or they're walking the dog, or washing their car. And if they want to get more information, I'm going to put this in the show notes. It's goredux.ai. So it's GOREDUX.ai. Put that in the show notes so they can remember it. So, Alan, you've been around. You've seen a few things here and there. Give me this is a ridiculous question. Give me a 5-month prediction. I was interviewing someone. He said, well, I interviewed you in January. It's all changed since January.
So true.
Yeah, and so let's go just 1 year. So 1 year from now, we're sitting at the AWS conference. They're talking about, what do you think is going to happen? What major changes do you think are going to take place?
I think we're probably still talking about agentic AI.
Still,
I think so. But maybe you're seeing a lot more examples, right, of where it's actually been deployed, and people were talking about the benefit that they're getting from it. I think it's on the tip of everyone's tongue now. There are lots of ideas. Toes are in the water. I think a year from now, for me, the most interesting thing would be to come back and see, do people have real examples that show demonstrable business benefit, right, from deploying these things? But ultimately, that's if you're a leader of an organization. I led the Federal Acquisition Service at GSA. So, hey, I'm going to invest money in a technology to do something. I'm looking for a business benefit at the end, for that investment. So to me, that's what would be the interesting thing to see: is, are people deploying it, and what kind of benefit are they getting out of it?
So, Karthik, I would think that if you can apply AI to code development, this is going to be an easy win. I mean, a year from now, okay, name the agency, John. I'll give you the case study. I mean, this should be an easy win for something like this, because you understand that technology well enough. to migrate from COBOL into something much more difficult, respecting all those dependencies. There's too many things to worry about manually, but an automated system can, which is really what this is, automated. Isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what Redux does for any organization. So we get requests not just about COBOL. It's not just about, it's about any legacy system. We got natural, requests. We've got VB, Visual Basic, 6 requests to migrate to a more modern platform. So we are getting several requests, and this one is possible to scale only through some technology such as GoRedux.ai. I really, truly believe that this is going to be a game changer for Carson and for Carson's customers, mainly because it speeds up their modernization journey. It allows them to not just reimagine their architectures, it allows them to reskin or even refactor and go forward with whatever strategy that they have presented to themselves.
So I have a friend whose daughter just got admitted to Penn State, and she's going to study computer science. And we were having dinner, and I said, well, what's your syllabus going to be like in 4 years? Well, with history, you can project that out. I mean, with engineering, you can specifically project it out. But with cybersecurity and development, should she maybe look into, let's say, architecture, maybe system because I can see the value being in architects understanding these complex environments and really understanding, because some of the more detailed work is going to be done by agents, I see, but the architects understanding the big systems. So give us academic advice here. Enterprise architects, I think, will be more and more valuable in the years to come.
I think they'll be valuable. I think Karthik mentioned earlier that agents can help kind of take away some of the basic work, maybe things that are people consider them kind of drudgery, right? Focus more on strategic work, on high value work, on things that are creative and innovative. That's, at least today, right? That's what humans can still do that the AI doesn't necessarily do. So I think she might be fine if she goes into software development, right? But her role when she gets out, right, might not be just sort of plug in as a junior coder somewhere. They might say, we've got agents that do that work, right? We need somebody who's creative and innovative and is doing things maybe at a little bit higher level. So the coursework could change, and my guess is her experience in the job market and internships and things like that, right, will be a little bit different than maybe it was for somebody even just a few years ago.
So Karthik, we go downstairs and hop in a taxi, go up to Georgetown, and we grab a freshman and we sit him down with you. Wow. And so what should they study? Is it critical thinking? Is it originality, creativity? What do you study?
It's critical thinking, but I also want to just draw an analogy here. I don't know if your daughter is a Pokemon fan, but think about it. There are Pokemon trainers. So I'm thinking the curriculum is going to go towards the trainers, and because you're training the agents, you're training the LLMs, you're training, you know what I'm saying. So there's a lot of decision aspects. There's critical thinking, like Alan said. It is essentially the decision-making, strategic viewpoints. That high-value tasks, and those kinds of things are going to be more prevalent, those kinds of courses.
Well, we started off talking about Johnny Carson, and we talked about real estate, and then Pokemon. So I think we covered all the bases, Alan. What do you think?
I think we do. I just want to, for the record, I don't know anything about Pokemon, so I'm glad it didn't come to me on that one.
Yeah, the people are going to listen to this podcast and go, what were they talking about? And I'm talking about change.
Yes.
Change management.
Yes.
Maybe there's a major in change management. I majored in change management because that's everyone's life in the next 4 years is going to be that.
On a daily basis.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, here we're running out of time. I'll keep a link in the show notes to every website we mentioned here. You just listened to the Federal Tech Podcast with John Gilroy. Our guests today were Alan Thomas, former Commissioner of Federal Acquisition Service at the GSA, and Karthik Mitri, co-founder and chief architect at Carson Solutions, Karsun, and he puts the car in Carson.